So to start off with, I'm sure a lot of you might actually be surprised that I'm actually covering a DC comic as part of my Pride Month reviews. But when you learn the premise of this, you'll understand as to why I'm reviewing this one. Now for those of you who grew up in the 90s, a lot of you might have grown up with the old DC Vertigo. And that was a time when, back then, DC had a lot of more adult titles that they did not want to release with mainstream comics, so Vertigo was essentially for the more magical, or much more darker, more adult style comics. For instance, comics such as Transmetropolitan, Codename Knockout, Swamp Thing, Constantine Hellblazer, as well as Fables. But that is not our subject for today. Today we're going to be talking about an 8-issue miniseries known as Enigma. I actually had this comic in my shelf for a while, in my collection. It had been sitting around for a bit, I hadn't read it yet, but a few days ago I decided to hell with it and decided to go on a full binge read of the full 7 issues that I have available. I do not have issue 8, but I'm actually tempted to grab it just to complete the collection. But, to continue. When I first grabbed Enigma, I thought it was going to be essentially a masked vigilante who looks so much like Phantom of the Opera, like it's not even funny. Like, just looking at Enigma's face, it reminds me so much of Phantom of the Opera that I can't help but laugh. But at the same time, I was actually proven completely wrong throughout this entire story. What did I get in return? I got an absolute mind boggle of a story. Like, seriously, there is so much going on in this comic that it completely throws you for a loop. Not in a bad way, it's just there's so much terrifying stuff here that goes on that you're left going for the loop and you actually are hooked from the very first issue. So, the main story of Enigma is that we have our average Joe, known as Michael Smith. He's a guy in his 20s who lives with his girlfriend in Pacific City, California, and works as a regular telephone repairman. So, completely average Joe, right? However, as he goes through at night, he starts having these visions of a masked man in his dreams. But then, at one point, he gets attacked by a mysterious creature calling itself the Head. And there's one thing that I will say for the author here. They definitely knew how to create some horrifying imagery, especially considering that this comic came out in like the 1990s, like 1993 to be exact. That older, much more messier style really actually highlights the more horror aspects of some of the creatures that are shown throughout this series. Now the Head is a prime example. It looks like a human from the neck down, but the head is so grotesquely elongated with massive flowing hair, and yet their whole shtick is that they absorb a person's life through their brain matter, like literally shoves a bendy straw up their victim's nose and sucks out the brain matter. Like, ugh. I couldn't help but actually shiver when I read that. It just made me almost want to just vomit. But seriously, that's some of the stuff that is shown throughout this comic. And then right after that, we see another creature known as the Truth. A guy who exposes your deepest, darkest secrets, and you can't hide from them anymore. Whether the guilt kills you or not, or just vaporizes you into nothing but ash, depends on, I guess, the severity of the secret. But to just give an idea. So, at one point, he actually looks into a man's eyes and reveals his deepest, darkest secrets. This man realizes that he actually has an attraction towards his own daughter, who is in her 20s, and he's like in his 30s, 40s, something like that. And I was honestly disgusted by that point. But what happens to the guy when he's revealed with this dark secret? He is completely vaporized to nothing but ash. And my God, I was not expecting that at all. But throughout all of this ties back into Michael because he keeps encountering these creatures popping up every once in a while. But at the same time, he actually sees a masked vigilante facing off against these creatures, only to later find out that these characters are all from an old comic book that he read as a child called The Enigma. Now, The Enigma only lasted for like 3 issues in the universe, of course. But Michael has remained a hard-time fan for so many years, and now he sees all these characters from his comic coming to life. So, as of that point, to try to get some answers, he goes on to try to find the comic's creator, known as Titus Bird. Now, Titus is a dude who does not understand or is just unwilling to recognize that all of his characters are coming to life. And frankly, he reveals to Michael that he essentially wrote The Enigma when he was high on drugs. So, to get to the main crux, Michael essentially is trying to figure out what is going on, how these guys are all popping up all over the place, and importantly, how it all ties back to him. And throughout all of this journey, his personality changes to a great deal. But throughout the story, we see Michael's change and how he tries to figure out how this all started. But then, how this one ended up in my Pride Month reviews, though, is the fact that as we keep going, we actually come to find out that Michael himself is actually discovering that, apparently, he's gay. And that honestly threw me for a loop when I first found that out. I'm like, wait, what? You mean to tell me that all of this is literally just Michael coming to terms with the fact that he's gay? And all I could think to myself was, really? I was surprised, that's for sure. But throughout it all, I wanted to see where this comic would go. And after reading 7 issues, it definitely grabbed my attention, especially with the budding romance of Michael and the Enigma. It caught me completely off guard because I was not expecting it, but I just wanted to keep reading, so I did. And after all of this, what do I think of the comic? If I were to label it as one thing, I would definitely label it as a mindfuck. Seriously, some of the stuff in here that is so supernatural and so mind-bendingly weird. Like the head, for instance, or the truth. And even the Enigma himself. Like, we actually see some of Enigma's backstory in issue number 7, which is a very tragic story, to put it simply. Like, Enigma was essentially thrown down a well by his mother and then left to rot there, only surviving in the dark underground while it's feeding off lizards. And all I could think was, damn, that is really sad. But I honestly wonder if the author, Duncan Fegredo, was actually inspired by Phantom of the Opera when he made the Enigma. I honestly wonder that. So did this story surprise me? Yes, it did. Is the artwork amazing? Is it trippy? I would say it's both. Yeah. That definite 90s style is a definite grab for anyone who's interested in an older comic, especially one that's only like 8 issues. There is a graphic novel release, but I think I'll just stick with the older comics that I have collected. So do I recommend Enigma? Only if you want a short series, or if you're interested in just seeing what this whole thing is about. If you're curious, go ahead and check it out. But one more thing, I absolutely love the cover art for these things. Like, they remind me of like older movie posters, like straight from the 90s. Like, just look at them. You had the first issue shown right here in the middle to some of the other ones, and it looks like a movie poster, just from where I'm looking at. The art style is amazing on the front covers, and it definitely counters with that choppy artwork for the comic itself. All in all, I would definitely recommend checking out Enigma at some point if you're interested in a short mini-series. And honestly, it completely caught me off guard, and I actually stayed up until midnight trying to finish this one. I'm not even kidding. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for listening, and if you listened to this all the way, again, I cannot thank you enough. And if you enjoyed listening to this crazy man's ramblings, just feel free to leave a like or a comment section down below. And just let me know what you think. And if you have any other interesting or weird titles you'd recommend to me, please let me know that as well. Anyways, you guys, thank you again for listening, and this is Rambling Collector, signing off. Have an awesome day.